This is Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces. Our host, Marwan, will be coming on board shortly. And this week, as in the last several weeks, and probably into the near future, we have another guest is Tom Martin. Oh, and Marwan's just on now. So I will bring them both on and let's start the show. Hello, gentlemen.
How are y'all
Gentlemen.
doing today?
That was mean.
Well,
How are you?
I do the best I can with the truth. So how are y'all today?
Scrambling.
Good.
But
Good. Today's my Monday.
Well, welcome to Monday. And Marwan, you were saying?
Oh, I said scrambling, but good.
Yeah, you look like you're at the 4040 Wheaton Way.
I am not. But the main studio has had a change. So it's in the middle of changing, but the show's at once. Like, oh, gotta go. So yes. Excuse the glisten.
It's quite all right. It's kind of like the way we are. Hey, Terry, how are you? Anyway, I think I got everything set up. Marwan, if you want to take a quick look at all of the settings to make sure I'm where we're supposed to be, because I'm still kind of new to this being in the studio thing.
You're 5x5, and I'll run it from the back. You got it.
Okay, excellent. So today's topic is empathy. And I've had several conversations lately about, the whole concept of how we're going to fix the future. And one of the things that I keep coming back to is we have to embrace our humanity, and that means we have to embrace empathy for other humans. We cannot continue to try and live as isolated individuals solving the problems. Oh, going orange now. Okay. Which is really good because I'm running purple in the background. Anyway, as you see in my thing is empathy. It's not about you. We need to start looking at each other, and those of us who do, congratulations, wonderful. We need more of you. Talk to people around you and get it out into the world. We need to stop thinking that we have the solutions. And this is something I had a conversation with earlier today, is that, I've talked to lots of people and one close to me today about them feeling that they have to come up with all of the solutions themselves. And so I'm going to give you a perspective piece of what if the solutions are out there in somebody you know or people around you, and you just have to be open to hearing them. And they may be the perfect solution for you. It just didn't come from you. It happened to be coming from someone in your community. So that's a question to both of you.
Tom, you want to jump in there?
I do. I've had this conversation before in different context, and I think one of the things that's dividing us right now is the fact that I would agree most of us all want to get to the same place, right? We all want to feel secure. We all want to have our families with us. We all want peace and love and happiness, to just make it short and sweet. But I don't think we all agree on how to get there. And in some cases, I think we have some roadblocks in ideas, because if your motivation to go from point A to point B is, if your motivation is Q, and someone else agrees that we need to go from point A to point B, but their motivation is X, and they don't agree on our motivations, we have another roadblock. And I see a lot of that right now because people can't agree on motivation. Who cares how we get there? If we're going from A to B, let's just get to B.
Just accept that the motivation is the motivation, and you don't have to own it, and they don't have to own yours.
Right. But I think personal sovereignty is kind of under attack these days. And
maybe it should be.
That's a problem. Say what?
And maybe it should be.
You think so?
Well, it depends on how you mean sovereignty, and that's another one of the roadblocks is how we use words,
Oh,
and our understanding of what we say when we say words. I think that a lot of people use individualism to cover their fear, to
yeah.
be blunt. And maybe we need to open that up and just look at the fear and solve the problem.
Yeah, but tackling your fears, engaging with your fears, dealing with your fears, whatever words you want to use to describe it, that's a scary thing, and most people can't do it.
It's most people are very fearful of it.
Well, we've been redundantly circular on that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a thing that we, and this is another thing I've been thinking a lot about, and I've kind of started writing an article on, is that we spend so much time avoiding things that scare us that we fail to see what's right in front of us.
Well, no, the only thing that we see is something scary. We can't peel away the scary stuff and look at the good. That's all you have to do is step across that void or whatever symbolism you want to throw at it, and it's right there for the picking.
Mm-hmm. And I was at an event this weekend, the South Sound Sustainability Festival, and we had some really very good conversations, a lot of intense conversations with people. Some of the people who were there that are vendors, and a lot of people that were there just walking through, talking about humanity, and everybody wanted to get to the same goal, but they had vastly different views of how to get there.
Yeah.
And in and amongst it, they'll look at one thing that they are very passionate about, but they won't look at the three things that connect to it to cause it, because that scares them.
Right. That's I think that's one of our obstacles right now, socially speaking. I'm pretty sure we don't want to get political in this conversation, but
why not?
No, we're not. We're talking about people.
Right, but politics are how we decide as a society what the rules are, and
it?
I think it's supposed to be.
Supposed to be and is two different things.
Yeah, and well, I mean, right now all we're doing is agreeing that we have a whole bunch of roadblocks between here and there, and do we even really know where there is?
Well, that's one of the things that we try and get people, and going back to the conversation about people being fearful, so fearful they can't see anything. And for God's sakes, if you put it right in their face, they suddenly get really angry with you, and are really angry with the situation because you're telling them about something that they're fearful of, and they don't want to hear it. I mean, one of the reasons we don't talk much about some of the consequences of our actions are because people don't want to hear about the consequences of our actions. They want to elect somebody to fix it. Going back to the political side of things, except when has that ever happened? It's certainly not in the last 50 years.
50 years?
I'm being
50,000 years.
I'm being generous.
Yeah.
Because there are people that argue that that human beings have only been on this planet for 4,000 some odd years. So just say 50 years, we'll keep it even. Say for 50 years, I have not seen anybody be elected and actually change anything in a meaningful way that will move toward our safety in the near future.
Right. Well, I mean, that goes back to what we were talking about before everything went live. We're just fancy monkeys. We're primates, and we're acting like primates, and what we're talking about doing is rising above that, and that is really hard to do as a group.
But I also want to point out to the people who didn't hear our conversation earlier that you agree that we have the potential to do so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I was trying to just kind of recognize that idea, but as a group, that is super, super hard to do.
Yeah, so we have to do it on an individual level, and
that is exactly what I was just about to say.
Which goes back to tipping points. You get enough people on an individual level, coming together and making those changes, you reach a tipping point and everyone else follows along.
This one might be different. I don't know if everyone else is going to follow along. I think this is going to be one of those very, very long-term projects where people are going to have
generational, certainly.
Yeah. Yes. This conversation is going to have to be had over and over and over.
Yep.
What are they following along to?
Say what?
What are they following along to?
Well, Marwan, in a tipping point, anything. We have gone down some really dark paths as a tipping point, where people have gone down the path and other people have followed along blindly, and we've gotten to some really dark and bad places. Hey, Kendra, tipping points aren't just for good things. Tipping points are a process in which change happens. And a good tipping point is a good tipping point. A bad tipping point is a bad tipping point, but they're all tipping points. So the question is, we need to decide where we're going to go in community to get where we need to be in community.
So what's that thing? Do we have something that we're advocating for?
Well, actually, the Kitsap Resiliency Project advocates for several things. Most of them very human-based security things like Power for All, which, by the way, rang a lot of chords with people on Saturday. The Food for All project, amending the issues with our infrastructure that put us at risk, and start providing the things that we need to live as human beings. The Democratic Socialists, like Bernie Sanders, push for free education, and that's in conversation, which I never thought would happen. So that's a tipping point heading in the right direction. But you also have a lot of people screaming for essentially giving everything away to corporations and to hell with people, which is also a tipping point. So which one is going to win? The one that the most people focus on. But again, we're all afraid, so we don't even want to commit to listening to something that could take us there.
Well, we all have to agree on where there is.
And again, when we bring our puzzle pieces into the puzzle, we can have that conversation.
Right.
And so getting people to the puzzle when they can't even hear that there's something they need to do, and they're completely overwhelmed by just trying to get rent paid or to keep their family together. And what was it? I'm going to quote Bo again. It was a conversation about the 3 incidences that happened a week ago. One was the 16-year-old black kid that walked up onto the wrong porch and got shot. There was the girl in the car in New York who pulled into the driveway to turn around and go back the other way, and the guy ran out of the house and put 2 rounds in and killed her. And then there was the police in Farmington, New Mexico, who were on the wrong porch, and they finally decided they were on the wrong porch, and they were just getting ready to leave when the door opened, and the owner of the house sitting there pointing a gun at them.
Yep.
And Bo's comment on this, and I didn't know where it was going till the very end, but at the end he said something that rang so true to me, I just had to stop and go, wow. He says, we have to stop fear-mongering. People think they live in a combat zone. Do you live in a combat zone, Tom?
I don't feel like I do.
Yeah, Marwan, do you feel like you live in a combat zone?
That's a complicated answer. Depends on where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
I guess you got the college students down the street, which could be a thing, but
well, I'm also downtown Bremerton, so there's a lot of different factors to consider in that. But again, it depends on where you're at.
Yeah.
You ask me if I'm in downtown Seattle. Yeah, well, am I in Texas, in Fort Lewis, or in Houston? Am I in Philly?
To keep it simple, where you live, in your home in downtown Bremerton, do you feel like you're in a combat zone, or do you feel pretty safe walking to your car and walking around your neighborhood?
I think that question is, how do I answer this?
Do you feel you need to carry a gun?
Absolutely.
You do? Huh.
Sometimes.
Absolutely.
Really? Because I don't ever feel like I need to, no matter where I'm at. I think that would get me in more trouble than it would solve a problem.
So as
That's the private.
Mm-hmm. That's a private chat, Tom.
Yeah, it popped up and I went, it's first time.
As I say, it's complicated, right?
Yeah,
it's complicated.
So, as someone, I used to drive truck, right? In my mid-20s, I drove truck for a while, and that took me into some parts of some towns that were not so savory. And after one bad incident, yes, I got my concealed carry license. It was a matter of personal safety, and there are some small occasions where I don't feel safe.
Well, think about it. Reflecting on what Bo was talking about, those incidents, the cheerleaders that came out of the convenience store and got in the car on an accident, the wrong car, guy gets out of the car and shoots him. Cheerleaders, right? Gig Harbor, the old man that shot the dude that was, I guess, shoplifting. He thought he was shoplifting, and so he shot him. Right? I mean, now it can literally happen anywhere.
And for me, having a gun on my hip doesn't make it safer for me. Let me share with this. Martial arts, I've been in martial arts on and off most of my life. And the thing that my teacher taught me early on was, if you're depending on the weapon, you're not thinking.
Correct.
And if you're not thinking, you're putting yourself at greater risk. By not having a weapon on myself, it gives me a chance to think about other options.
So disagree with that statement.
And that's fine. You can, but in my life, it has always been very prevalent. But on the other hand, I'm 6 foot, I'm white, and I carry myself pretty confidently. So that also keeps me out of a lot of situations.
So everyone doesn't have those
leverages. Yeah, I get it.
So being someone who's been a martial arts coach for a long, long time, I understand what you're saying, Mark, and I don't think it's the wrong approach for some mindsets, for some people. Having the tools at hand is important, though. Stand by
and understand. Nowhere in this am I saying I'm anti-gun. I've owned guns most of my life. I just don't tend to carry them.
Yeah, I don't typically either, unless I know I'm going somewhere that I'd rather probably not be anyways. But sometimes, life dictates you go somewhere you don't want to go.
Been there lots of times. It's the same neighborhood. But yeah, for me, it's a choice of I'd rather be aware of what's going on around me, and take the choice to get the hell out of there when I need to.
Right. Yeah, that's the unfortunate part of society. That's the ugly part.
But what's the likelihood that somebody's going to come onto your porch and you're just going to open the door and shoot them?
That should be zero. Should be.
That someone's going to come on your porch and you shoot them?
Yeah, like the kid in Kansas who went to the wrong house to pick up his siblings, and the guy opened the door and shot him.
That was ridiculous.
We'd have to discuss, what else is going on there, if anything.
The news coverage, right? And all we have is the news coverage, but the news coverage said basically this kid drove over to pick up his siblings. He went to the wrong house. He walked up, he knocked on the door. Guy opened the door and shot him.
I heard that he didn't even open the door. So
shot through the glass door. Sorry, that was the news. But yeah, he basically saw the kid and shot him, and through the glass door.
So with DoorDash, Amazon, UPS, I mean, there's the post person. There's so many folks that come to your door, Jehovah's Witness, Mormons, right? To me, there's some other circumstances that could be at play there.
Yep.
But I couldn't imagine just someone knocking on my door and that's going to be my response.
Yep.
However, home invasions are a real thing, and they happen more and more and more often.
Because our economy's tanking further and further and further.
Right.
So I think in that particular instance, we've got societal pressures that have gone and made that back to that fear mongering you were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got we have a whole bunch of confused people, and that instance happened, I think, because of confusion and some, probably some diminished capacity. It sounded like the person who did the shooting was
84.
In their golden years, shall we say. So I think between diminished capacity and mass media and social nonsense
and racism, because he was an 84-year-old white guy and the kid was black.
Right.
And Tom, you're being quite generous there in your assessment.
Let
me say this, Tom, and Mark.
Mm-hmm.
I like what Tom is saying, right? It's like you have social media, right? And we're being programmed, right? That's why they call it programming.
Yes, we are.
If we say, far left would be Antifa, far right would be, everything that's there. There was a court case, I guess, that went forward where Fox News was, being held accountable, like saying, hey, look, you're not reporting the news. This is an opinion. And they were able to wriggle out of that and say, well, no, people can tell the difference between opinion and news. The problem is they cannot, right? And so whether it's MSNBC or Fox News, those things have shaped our society over the last few decades, right? And so go ahead, Tom.
So here's the problem with, I call it legacy media, right? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter if it's Fox or MSNBC or CBS or ABC, pick your alphabet. When you go and look at the fine print on what mass media, legacy media, whatever, on their, if you look at the fine print of what their organization is supposed to be, it does not say news. It doesn't say that anymore. It says entertainment. Mm-hmm. They do that in the fine print, so now they're no longer legally liable for anything they say.
So let's take a step back from that and go to the point that, except with the notable exceptions of like PBS and to a great degree The Guardian in the UK.
And the UK is a different legal system.
Well, yeah, no, but I'm actually specifically
biased.
But my point is, they are publicly supported as opposed to corporately supported. But predominantly, all of the newspapers that we have access to in this country are for-profit media. Therefore, Their goals are to make money, not to tell the truth.
Correct. That's why they say entertainment instead of news.
True, but Mark, you're basically saying PBS being state-sanctioned media is somehow more pure.
No, I'm just saying that they're not corporately funded, so their goals and we have to look at everybody and determine what their goals and what motivates them. As we started this conversation with, all of us want to get someplace, but we want to get there in different ways, and we conflict. But PBS wants to get someplace too. We just have to understand what it is, and for them, it's continuing getting federal funds. So I'm guessing that will color their attitude.
Exactly. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
Well, no, I'm not hiding anything. I'm just saying my point was that PBS is not corporately funded. Didn't say that they were, Snow White and clean. And the Guardian, they have their biases, but they are publicly funded. ProPublica has their biases and they're publicly funded, but they're closer to the truth generally, and they don't play so fast and loose. And as does Fox News, who just lost $785 million in a defamation of character settlement.
Yeah, see, I would point that same finger at all legacy media. I wouldn't just pick on Fox News. I mean, I'm
just saying that because they're the most in the news right now. I agree with you.
Oh, okay, yeah,
100%.
Legacy media is, I think, a huge part of the responsibility of why our nation is so divided right now. And it doesn't matter.
It's media, it's legacy media, it's social media, it's memes, it's propaganda. Bo just did.
Social media is a different creature, though.
Well,
legacy media is it. They're all about trying to get ratings to sell advertising, so they're very profit driven.
Yeah, I'm pointing out that you were saying it's a large reason why we're divisive, and yes. Social media adds right into that. And I was going to point out that Bo just did a show on propaganda. And he talks about how easy it is for people to create a meme that has a true statement in it, but is worded in such a way that it elicits an emotional response and can even be weaponized on social media, getting people all hyped up and into this divisive space.
Oh, that's the whole point of social media nowadays.
Which is
to continue to divide people, us and them.
Yeah, but it is still a valuable tool if you can maintain some control over that.
Yeah. Yes.
Which takes an enormous amount of time.
Enormous amount of time and energy. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think we can agree that media and social media and messaging has a lot to do with why we carry fear with us, and why there's situations in which fear is absolutely the right response. And a lot of times the fear is not the right response.
Well, fear is a survival instinct.
Right. But we have a lot of it, and we put it in a lot of places that aren't even necessary. I mean, if a 16-year-old black kid came up to my door, first of all, I'd say, hello, how are you? What's going on?
Right.
My first instinct.
Any reasonable person should do that.
But the unreasonable responses are growing daily.
Yes, they are.
And part of the reason is because of the media response to generating fear. Media of all sorts, not just one or the other.
Correct. I mean, that's how they're selling their advertising, because if you're afraid all the time, then you're going to tune in all the time to see, what do I need to look out for next?
Right. And yet,
so why aren't we intellectually honest, to call that out and say, look, basically the American people don't seem to have any agency. They fall for whatever's put out there in mass. There's a very few that can see legacy media for what it is, and they have diverged from that, and they get their news from more reputable sources.
Yeah.
But for the majority of us, we're just caught up into it, and we just ride the wave, and we have no critical thinking skills. What's happening?
Well, that goes right back to the school system and education.
Well, and I think it also goes to social dynamic, because right now, I mean, for all intents and purposes, I know this is a public conversation, but there's three of us right here. I can see three people, myself, Marwan, Mark, and we're having a conversation. So we're having this conversation as individuals, not as members of a group.
Mm-hmm.
And when you sit down and talk to an individual people are smart. Individual people can express themselves. Individual people can put forth their ideas. But when you get everyone together as a group, we get real dumb real fast.
So I would say that you just coined exactly why the Kitsap Resiliency Project is going to be successful, because it deals with keeping people on the individual human level.
And that's the only way that you can do that. That's the only way you can get this message out, is by taking the time and going person to person to person. But you've got to do it over and over and over, because if people hear it once, it's like, well, when Marwan mentioned earlier, the Jehovah's Witness comes to your front door. If that's not part of your belief system, you're going to be polite, because that's the social thing to do, unless you're a member of the fringe, that doesn't have manners. You're going to be polite. You're going to listen for the 45 seconds they're on your front porch. They're going to go away. You're going to go back to making your bowl of ramen and watching Desperate Housewives of whatever city.
Okay, you brought something up. I have to share a story with you guys. Back in the days when I lived in San Francisco, I had a friend who had a interesting sense of humor. Let's just put it that way. And he painted a pentagram on his floor and put a chair in the middle of it. And he did that So when Jehovah's Witnesses came over, he'd invite them in and have them sit in the chair and have and sell his point to you. And strangely enough, they never came back to his home.
Oh, that's so weird.
But isn't that really the core of the problem? Like, while funny, right?
Yeah.
This is what they believe. They're trying to do outreach. It's not nefarious, right?
No.
They're just as polite and kind if you say no, thank you, right? And they move on. And that's what it is, right? So to kind of weaponize it in that way and say, well, you know what, I'm going to shove it in your face. Like, how are we ever going to get together if that's the space that the other side is operating?
Exactly right, Marwan. Exactly right. That we have to get to a place to do that. But on the other hand,
now it is funny. Don't get me wrong. I can see the humor in it.
Yeah. So from my point of view, I used to be a lot like him, and that really appealed to me that way. But these days, when the Latter-day Saints kids come by and ask if they can help me, I ask them, yeah, come on in, help me do these things. I've gotten them to move a lot of stuff for me and such, and they honestly believe that it's their mission to help people. And they aren't really big on selling me on stuff, and I'm okay with that. But 15, 20 years ago, when people came to sell their religion to me, I was kind of rabidly anti, don't do that. I don't want to hear about it. But there we go, overcoming our primate nature and looking at things in a bigger and broader lens.
So, you talk about meeting people where they are.
Mm-hmm. And that's the process.
Yeah, well, that is a process, especially if an individual has gone and found comfort in whatever religion. It doesn't matter what it is. But the goal of religions is to reach out and spread that religion. So you get Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on your front door, inviting you to, their church service or whatever, and meeting those people in that place at that time and understanding what it is that they find comfort in to have that conversation. That's a big barrier to overcome.
Actually, I've done that to a great degree since then. I've actually had in-depth conversations with Jehovah's Witnesses and Latter-day Saints. And to a great degree, I find several of the Latter-day Saints community very much allies in what the Kitsap Resiliency Project is doing, because they're all about community and preparedness.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's in their DNA, and it's kind of like what we do. So we find ourselves working and having conversations together. And so, yeah, I've spent a lot of time, and as I said, in college, I was in religious studies, which to some degree created a lot of my intolerance, but age has overcome that, and experience has overcome a lot of my intolerance toward it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We can work with each other as coworkers, right? But then when it's in a personal time, then all of a sudden there's this dividing line that is so clear and stark. So yeah, you come over and you want to preach whatever your gospel is to me, or the lack of gospel, because that's gospel also. Then so be it. But as you said, we can work on other things together, right? We can ensure that everyone has clothing or housed or has food or things of that nature without mixing that piece of it together. And we're able to do it every day in those spaces.
Yeah. And
so I think sometimes it's just a distributive factor of, we can do it over here. We just need to be more conscious and do it over here.
And a thought came to my mind, is going back to the original conversation Tom had, is that we all want to get to the same place, but we want to do it in different ways. And I sometimes think that there isn't a single religion that I know of, a U.S. religion that I know of, that does not have tenets in their primary text to care for other people. Yet I don't see them all coming together to take care of large groups of people. They are all doing it individually, because they're each doing it within the tenets of their own thing. And we have to find a way to say, we're all trying to get here. Let's work together to get here. Because together, many hands make light work, Marwan. I don't know where I heard that, but but if we can come together, the resources we have go way farther.
Yes.
So why are we each trying to do this and overcome this within the tenets of our own small bubble?
Because it's in our nature as primates.
Well, and yet here we are having this conversation and talking about overcoming it. How can we get other people to come onto the discussion and then start taking action together?
Honestly, the only answer I can think of is by doing exactly what we're doing right here, right now. Is being open and transparent and letting people see behind the curtain and let them engage if they choose to. But they have to understand that what they're engaging in is not, it's not part of their tribalism. So they have to broaden their minds. They have to open their minds up and see that, okay, this here is my box and I'm comfortable in this box. But the big picture where we're all trying to go is in this box, and my box will fit inside that box, but I have to be comfortable with that idea, and that's change, and change is scary.
And yet,
so I was trying to look up, you know, the coexist bumper stickers that you see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was trying to see if that was like an organization or a group.
Those are all different religious symbols.
Right. I think maybe it needs to go beyond just a bumper sticker. Mark, I think you brought up a great idea that I've never heard of before, is saying, hey, let's reach out to all of these different faiths and let's come together for one initiative. Start off small, right? A picnic at the park that's open to all, and just come and eat, and we're not gonna share what we believe or anything like that. We're just coming just to fellowship as humans, and then we can start to take it a little bit further and say, okay, how can we provide food to the unhoused? You're doing this over here, you're doing that over there. Well, you've got transportation, we have kitchens, we have access to food, and then really start to really shift and live out the bumper sticker.
And we can
all the time.
We can start with several of the churches in our area have property where they have the potential of gardening. I know KUF has got all this land that has a sunny side. They could be growing a lot of food there. And I talked to them about that 10 years ago, and no one was interested in doing it. I have actually reached out to several faith leaders in our area, and they go, and then don't want to do that. There is a group in Kitsap County that is a Multi-Faith Alliance. They actually meet once a month, usually at the Family Pancake House over on Kitsap Way. And they talk and they know each other, but nothing ever comes out of it. So if we do this, it would have to be on a congregational level and push it up to the powers that are there and the board of directors.
Anthropologically speaking, the problem you have there is when it comes to faith, there's a doctrine built within most faiths that say this is the correct, this is the true and only
one right way,
right, and everything else is wrong and should be fought against. So,
and yet
those conservative values are they've got booby traps built into them.
Yeah, and they're also in the same situation as most nonprofits, as they're competing for the same dollar.
Right, and so those are your I guess liberal values, and they have booby traps built within them.
Mm-hmm.
And
everything.
So let me ask you questions. How are they competing for the same dollar? What dollar are they competing?
The parishioner. There are more and more churches popping up everywhere, and the parishioners have got to come from somewhere. A lot of churches are starting to lose attendance, and people are trying out other churches. I know one lady that comes from Poulsbo all the way down to Silverdale to go to a church, and there's one right across the street from where she lives. So they're to some degree trying to get people into their church, and to help support the church with donations is part of the deal. And that's always the subtext whenever you go to a faith of some sort. I know that.
Right, but that's even a challenge even within the same faith, right?
Yeah, absolutely. it makes it really friendly to be, three parts of the same Methodist church or Southern Baptist church.
Well, and I'll say, I am a Christian. I believe in the Christian way. So as Tom says, yeah, I do believe that is the right way. However, I don't live my life in saying, well, if you are Catholic or if you're Muslim or if you're whatever, then you need to be, condemned and vilified, and you need to be converted,
Yeah.
right? You've got to live your life, and you have to answer for what you have to answer for, and I'm not responsible for that.
No.
So, my job is to, do right by what I believe, and if I do that, then I'll be okay. All that being said, please send me the information. I think I'd like to go and check out the multi-faith breakfast if it's an open thing, and have a conversation, because sometimes it just takes someone from the outside to say, hey, you guys are doing some great things, have you considered this, or why don't you try that, right?
Yep. And actually I was invited to it through the United Methodist Church over off of Marine Drive to present about Cascadia Rising and some of the things going on, because the reason I started reaching out to the faith is that it seems to me in a disaster, most people are going to look to their church. In something like Cascadia Rising, where we had 9 magnitude quake followed by a tsunami. And by the way, Marwan, I don't have an answer for the hole in the ocean yet. I will shortly, but it's interesting science.
And it was UW, so that's why I said
no. Yeah, no, and I've got to do some research on it. I don't know how indicative it is, and right now I'm not stressing too much because it's geologic time. But we have Cascadia Rising. We know it's going to happen. We know we're well in the window of it. And I was talking to the churches saying, so when your parishioners start looking to you, and in the feces has truly hit the fan, don't you think you want to do a little preparedness and thinking about it beforehand? And none of them were interested in having that conversation. Went, how nice. That was it. No one wanted to follow up. No one wanted to talk about, sharing resources or helping figure out how to take care of the people that were going to be at risk.
Well, that
was my part. That's my point, Mark. I think that's too many rungs up on the ladder, right? They first just need to do something really tiny. Yep. That is so macro that they're not ready for that. They can't even.
Back in those days, I was looking for people who are leaders to lead. Mm-hmm. And nowadays I think about the small things that we can get them to build on. This was several years ago when I first started this.
So, and I feel like we hit on about three different three different topics there that we should like back up and dissect individually, just because as it's like we were saying earlier, as individuals, this conversation's really easy to have. But when you try to break this conversation down for the public at large, they still have to fit in their input and their ideas, and they have to integrate, what's between their ears as people into the whole idea, so that they have buy-in. Because if they're just listening and they don't get any input, they're not going to engage. They're not going to participate.
Which is why I don't do public speaking.
But I think public speaking is the first step. And when you get right down to it, what we're doing here is public speaking.
Well, yes, but I mean, I don't go talk to a room full of people, telling them what they should do and how they should do it and how they should think, because by and large, that has proved fairly futile.
Not what they should do and what they should think, but where they should go. It should be an invitation. It should be, come here if you want to know more. Mm-hmm. And you have to put it that way. If you want to know more, you leave it up to their individual sovereignty. Because if you just say, hey, here's the right answer, you get people that don't have any critical thinking skills. They're just looking for someone to tell them what to do.
They're looking for somebody to do it for them, really.
Well, either do it for them or tell them what to do.
Yeah.
But
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think there are some people, I mean, you have soldiers in general.
Yeah.
Right. Some people need to tell me what to do, and I'm gonna do it, and I do it great, right? I make that widget, and I'm the best widget maker that you'll have.
Right, but if they're gonna make the widget, they have to make the right widget. They have to make it the right way. They have to make it at the right time. They have to make it in the right place, and they have to make it for the right people.
And it has to fit, it has to fit with the other widgets being used to solve the problem.
All I'm saying is that those people are valuable too, right? It's like there's a space for that.
They can be, yes. Soldiers are as valuable or more valuable than generals, but you still have to get all the generals in the right place at the right time, in the right ways, making the right decisions. Mm-hmm. And we're so divided right now. Marwan, I think you nailed it. We have to go to something really easy. Don't take 2 steps up the ladder. Take a half step up the ladder. Just get together and have a drink. Get together and have a barbecue. Get together and play Frisbee. Don't try to solve any problems. You're not ready for it yet.
And that's pretty much what we do. You know, when we do the workshops these days, we're talking to people about going to their neighborhood and having a block party. Yeah. Marwan and I spent all last summer throwing block parties for people. We're going to do some more this summer. It's about getting people to have that first conversation, and then we start talking to them about doing community gardening. And that to us is the first rung on the ladder. If you can get them to garden together, they're building relationships. If they're building relationships, they can do more.
Right. There's even obstacles to the gardening thing, right?
Fewer and fewer as the prices go up and the shortages continue.
Well, there's more motivation, certainly. But, I mean, you're still dealing with, laws of nature. Do you know what the Pareto distribution is?
Mm-mm. No, I don't.
It applies to everything, right? So it's the premise that, we can make it personal. Those that have more will get more. Those that have less will lose everything. You find it in Old Testament, scripture, that kind of thing. But it also applies to things like the accumulation of mass among stars. And there's, I don't remember the exact math behind it, but there's a ratio, a distribution, so that the most massive stars in the universe will collect more mass because they have more gravitational pull. And the smaller things in the celestial bodies in the universe will lose mass because those larger things, those giant stars and such, take mass away because they have more gravity. So that's the really easy way to look at it, as far as the distribution of stuff. But that happens all the way down to like the distribution of wealth in societies. Those that have will get more. Those that don't have will get less.
Except that eventually that system collapses.
Well, that's why we have black holes and stars collapse and turn into who knows what. And
so if we have the potential,
Egyptians.
So let's go back to that, and that's very interesting. But what if we are the primates and we have the potential to be more than primates, then we have the potential to change that. At least on a human level.
That is a law of nature, and that's a hard thing to change.
Yeah, but that's a mathematical law as opposed to a human or sociological law, and sociological laws can get changed.
Yeah, yes, they can be, but you've got to get everyone on board with it. And right now, not everyone's on board. Not even 1% is on board.
I'd say it's closer to 10% at the moment because we're actually reaching a tipping point on social justice and socialism.
We're not even close. I disagree with that.
I agree with Tom.
We're not even close. Heck, look at Bud Light. Right. And
I'd rather not.
Well, yeah, I know it's not a good beer. But the whole Dylan Mulvaney thing, Bud Light tried to be inclusive. Bud Light tried to do something different, and the public at large rejected it. Budweiser lost $5 billion, B with a billion in a week. So no, the Pareto distribution is not there, socially speaking.
And Tom, I feel like they deserve it, right? And this was, centered around the trans community, but that happens with the Black community all the time. And so it could come off as a very tokenized type thing.
It's a corporation, of course it would.
Yeah, but it can happen with all kinds of different sects and groups and bits and pieces of society. It can be the Black community, it can be the trans community. I mean, there's a million examples of it. But until we get beyond that, beyond this mathematical law of nature, and we can as humans. I mean, we have the capacity for it. A star does not. Human beings do. But until we all come together as people and work beyond that, you're stuck with the laws of math.
So sort of getting around to the 10-minute left mark, I think what you just said is until we have empathy.
Yeah.
And so we have to embrace our humanity and empathy, and we have to learn how to
but you're fighting human nature there. I mean, empathy is great. If you go back to there anthropologically speaking, there's argument about when did civilization start. Anyone want to throw their opinion?
About 15,000 years ago.
I disagree with that. It's older. Marwan?
Some of the things that I've been taking a look at recently, maybe 150,000 years ago.
Probably closer. In my opinion, just as someone who's studied this stuff, the earliest evidence of civilization is a healed femur bone. Right. So if a human being breaks a femur, back in the earliest days of Homo habilis, Homo erectus, the very, very earliest instances of human, if you broke a femur, you're dead. You cannot recover from a femur. So if you see a femur that has been healed, that means someone else expressed empathy. Someone else showed humanity. They helped that person heal. That was the earliest instances of civilization. And we haven't gone much beyond that yet.
Wait, how old was that bone?
Oh, God, I don't remember. It old, very old. At least Neanderthal, but probably older.
So Neanderthal was 100,000 years ago, roughly speaking.
Ish.
Yeah, when it started moving into Homo sapiens, so probably 100 and 150. So Marwan was pretty close to right.
Yeah, Marwan was really, really close.
So what was it you were looking at, Marwan, that made you think that?
Quite a few things. I like my urban legends and things of that nature. I think there's a little nuggets of truth in there that get through where the social media, legacy media don't allow to kind of come out and have that dialogue and conversation, right? We're seeing that now with, the vaccine and just a lot of information about that and how people were pushed down and canceled, and you couldn't have a dialogue if you had a difference of opinion. And now the facts are coming out kind of supporting that in many instances, they were actually absolutely right to do that. So when you stifle voice and thought, it's very dangerous.
Yeah, the whole point about bringing puzzle pieces together is that's vital. Having people bring their opinions and have respectful discussion about them, and then check the data and have everybody check it together.
But that doesn't fit in the hierarchy of being a primate.
We will overcome?
I hope so. I hope so. But part of being a primate is having a hierarchy. And we have one now. I mean, it's very clear and evident. And who's at the top of that hierarchy changes. But it still means that there's someone at the top and they're putting their boot on the head of the person under them.
And I'm actually very hopeful from your story, Tom. Somebody helped somebody else heal.
Oh, hey, I think that's one of the most beautiful stories in humanity.
Yeah, showing empathy 150,000 years ago, that's pretty cool.
That is the dawn of civilization, in my humble opinion. And I'm nobody, but I think that's the dawn of humanity. So it does give me some hope, but God, we haven't made a lot of progress in 150,000 years.
Well, we've
made technological progress. We can, technological progress has been cool, to some degree. I mean, that's a two-edged sword. We can vaporize a continent with nuclear weapons, or we can do some pretty amazing medical things.
Yeah, but our medical practices we've lost ground over the last 40 years.
That 40 years is nothing.
I understand that, but still we have. And I think that we've lost a lot of ground in empathy over the last lots of years.
500?
5,000.
Okay. I can't argue with that either. 500, 5,000.
We focus so much on the differences, we miss all of the similarities.
Well, that's in human nature. That's the problem. That's
I'll have to agree to disagree with you on that. I think that it's more programming from our culture.
I see it more as survival instinct. The things
I think survival instincts are used in the messaging to affect us and affect us to change in to harm ourselves. In lack of our own self-interest.
Well, if we go back to that 150,000 years ago, right, that dawn of civilization, we want to help each other, but we're still wary of things that are different from us, because things that are different from us will kill us, right? Yeah. That's why we're afraid of things that are different from us. That's why
I just think that we have that some very smart people somewhere along the line started paying attention to our instinctual behavior and what you call human nature, and they started tweaking messaging to affect our human nature, call it propaganda in the form, and weaponizing it so that we continue to vote against our own self-interest. We continue to act against our own self-interest. We continue to act against community, because the messaging to us constantly is to do exactly that, because we should be afraid of everything.
See, I don't see it as we're acting against our own self-interest. We're acting in the best interest of the top of the hierarchy.
Well, in a great degree, that's against our own best interests.
For the people at large, yes, but it's.
I think we're agreeing. We just are saying it differently.
Yeah, well, but I think that perspective is very important. That difference of perspective, the fact that we as human beings are still acting like primates, and we're trying to make the top of the primate hierarchy as good as it can be at the expense of the rest of the primates, that's a problem.
Yep. And you and I agree.
Yeah. Now, how we fix it, I think we won't agree on.
Maybe. I think that we all have to sit down. We have to bring our puzzle pieces to the puzzle, and we have to make room for each of us to talk.
Yep. Yeah. What fits together?
That's how I see doing it. I don't think we disagree on that either.
No. Personally, I think the best way to fix this is going to be through individual sovereignty. You can't do it as groups, because groups are stupid. Individuals are smart.
I think we agree on that too.
Oh, great. Then I have nothing else to add.
or detract.
Well, Tom, I definitely want you to unpack, in a future time, what individual sovereignty looks like, and what that model, how we would interact with each other and kind of go forward. That was fascinating.
That's a huge conversation. I don't even know the answers to it. I'm not smart enough.
Well, that's why we have other people.
Yeah, but we need to get even more other people. And all those other people need to agree also that they aren't smart enough.
Well, I think that sounds like a panel at an event that we should put together.
Ooh.
Okay. I'm in. I'm open.
So yeah, we'll bring a bunch of smart people in, and let's all have at it in a respectful way and see what we can come up to.
I like the idea. I really do.
Tables, ladders, and chairs. Cage match.
Can we throw some foil blades or something in there?
Absolutely.
Frisbees at 20 feet.
Frisbees. Okay.
I caught one of those in the balls when they first came out. They are not friendly.
So one of my tattoo artists was very, very much into disc golf.
Mm-hmm.
Don't call it frisbee golf. You will work some people up in those communities.
Yep.
Disc golf. And there is a difference between a disc golf disc and a frisbee. Mm-hmm. You can't catch a disc golf disc. It will rip your hand off. Yeah, you can catch a frisbee. No, I don't know why that was important, but whatever.
Well, it's just information. And
yeah,
information
you triggered a memory.
Okay, so we are at 2:00 or 1 hour into this program, and that would be the end of Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces for this week, and we will have a rousing subject next week. And in this case, I haven't planned it out, so I have no idea what it is.
Oh, nice. So a week where neither one of us know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'll figure it out in the next few days, but it's been a busy 2 weeks.
And as I understand it, Marwan, that's how you prefer it.
Yeah, I like it. To me, it gives me an authentic reaction to what I'm hearing. I also love, thinking, and I may change how I think later. So I do think about our conversations after, but it forces me to be present in the conversation, right? I need to pay attention. I need to listen. I need to try to comprehend what that person is saying to me and understand their point of view on that. So yeah, I enjoy it.
Yeah. See, I like a little bit of time to kind of pre-think on it and formulate some ideas that can be tossed out there into conversation, but you still have to be present, like you were saying, because you have no idea what's coming back. So you got to be on your toes and ready to defend your stance. So yeah, no, I love chatting with both of you gentlemen.
Well, maybe it's not defense; it's sharing our stance.
Yeah,
yeah, but you will defend. I mean, you still have to be able to defend your point of view to some degree, but also expand on it and incorporate other ideas into it and see how it fits in the world at large.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. So my final word is going to be empathy. It's not about you.
I couldn't agree more. If we could all, and unfortunately that's going back to what I was talking about, primate behavior, and the only way you survive is to think about yourself first. And that's not the society or the environment we live in anymore. And that's a hard thing to overcome.
All right. That is the final word for today. That was Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces with Tom, Mark, and Marwan. Come back in about 56 minutes for our conversation with the Bremerton Housing Authority and Kitsap Community Resources. I am Marwan Cameron. This is The Conduit. We'll see you soon.